Welcome to Painted Kids Studio, where we make amazing art videos. Hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you can be notified every time we post a new art video.
Welcome back to Painted Kids. This is Miss Jessica, and today we're going to be doing something super fun. We're going to be mixing a little bit of classical art with pop culture. We're going to be doing a Van Gogh Starry Night background with a Porg. All right, let's get started. All right, so I have my canvas here, and the first thing we're going to do is draw our little Porg's head, and we're just going to come up and around and down. So very like acorn shaped, like if it was flipped upside down and the cap was off. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the sides of my Porg. So this is going to be one of his wings, so I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to curve it in. I'm doing short strokes just because it makes it easier to get it over the texture of the canvas. And then I'm just going to bring that line up, but I'm going to stop it right before it hits the head of the Porg. And then I'm going to do the bottom, so I'm just going to curve it a little bit, come in, and then back out, and curve some more. And then bring it up. And I'm going to stop, and I'm not going to connect it. So I'm going to leave this little space open. And then I have one of his wings out, so I'm going to bring a straight line over. And then bring it down. And then over. So almost kind of a rectangular shape, but not quite. Alright, so I'm going to do the legs. So two straight lines next to each other, either side. And when I made that bottom, you'll see that I had it bumped out, kind of where the legs were going to go. Two slanted lines. And then for the flippers, we're going to curve in one, curve in one, and then we're going to go to the other side, and we're going to start at that point and curve again. And there are our little webbed feet. Just like so. I'm going to do his face, and I'm going to give him big oval eyes. Now, if you want to make the eyes smaller or a little bit more round, go right ahead. But I just wanted to make him extra cute, so I'm going to give him big oval eyes. And then I'm going to do a little circle on the upper left side of the eye, and that's going to be a highlight later on. And I'm making it a little bit bigger of what the end result is actually going to end up being, just so that way as I Sharpie, that circle will get smaller and won't be nearly as big. And then two little lines for more of that highlight. Two slanted lines, almost in a V shape for the nose, and a little frowny face. The Porg's faces are kind of pushed in almost like a pug face, so later on I'll accentuate kind of that jowly cheek look, even though the Porgs don't really have jowls. Alright, so now I'm getting ready for my Starry Night background. I'm just going to be putting a horizon line, and then I'm just doing some mountains in the background. So I'm just making them random, but I'm just going up and down, up and down. Again, continuing with that short stroke to really get around that canvas texture. Now it's time to put in my Starry Night moon, so I'm going to start with a crescent moon. And then as soon as I have my crescent moon down, I'm just going to do a circle around the moon, just like this. And then with the stars, I'm just going to do a little circle and then a bigger circle around, and I'm just going to strategically place those circles throughout the rest of my canvas. Now at any time during this video, if you would like to pause until you can catch up, feel free. Once I have my stars in, I'm going to draw in my swirl, so I'm just going to curve on one side of the Porg, and then I'm going to come around to the other side and just wrap it around. And it's okay if you kind of maneuver around the existing stars that you have. Then after you have your little swirl in, you can add some more stars. And again, if you would like to pause in order to catch up, feel free. And then as soon as you're done with your stars, you're going to go ahead and you're going to Sharpie. Now, as you Sharpie, you'll notice that I'm not making perfectly straight lines because I'm kind of giving off the impression that he's a little fuzzy. So as I'm sharpening around him, you know, I'm adding a couple squiggles here and there just to make him look a little fluffier. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to Sharpie everything that I have drawn in pencil. Just be careful though that if there are any lines that you needed to erase, not to Sharpie those lines. And the reason I Sharpie is so that as I paint, I don't lose my drawing. And there we go. And with the eyes, I'm just going to leave the eyes for now, and I'm going to show you guys a couple different options that you can use. Now for today's painting, I'm using white, yellow, red, blue, and black. And I'm just going to be using those primary colors just in case that's all you have at your home. Now the paints that I am using is Liquitex Basics, but you can really use any brand of paint that you want as long as you have your primary colors white and black. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my background because it's always easier to cover up any mistakes that you might make, like if your background paint gets into your character than it is the other way around. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a nice green color, which of course is yellow and blue mixed together. So I'm going to go ahead and just paint that in. I'm using kind of a bigger size brush to lay this down quickly because it's such a big space to paint. But if you wanted to use a smaller paintbrush, feel free to use any size paintbrush that you have on hand. And if you notice, I wasn't really worried about working around my Porg's feet. I just painted right over because I can go back later and I can cover that up. Now, to kind of ground my Porg a little more, I'm going to not only just use this green that I have here, I'm also going to make a darker green. So to make my darker green, I'm going to be using yellow and blue again, and then I just added the tiniest little bit of black just to darken it up a little bit and just mixed it right on in there. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to place it right underneath my Porg. And it's going to give the illusion of a shadow and just make him feel a little bit more grounded. Now, again, if you don't want to use this big of a paintbrush like I'm using, go ahead and just grab a smaller paintbrush and that will work just fine. And just add little small bits of black as you go until it's the darkness that you want. It's always easier to darken, it takes a lot more to lighten. Alright, I say that looks pretty good, so go ahead and rinse your brush. And I like to rinse my brush and then pinch it with a paper towel. So now what I'm going to be doing is doing my Starry Night Sky. And the best way to do that is I'm going to grab my primary blue. I'm just going to scoop that right up there. And then I'm going to take some black and just mix it on in there. And I'm just going to keep adding black until I get this nice navy blue kind of color. I want it to be a deep blue. I want it to be a little bit of a nice dark sky, so that way it'll contrast against the lighter blue that I do for my swirl. So I'm using a small round brush now for this part of the painting. And because I Sharpied, I will be able to see all my stars underneath my blue. So I'm just going to go right ahead and paint over them. I'm not too worried about painting around the stars and making the process a little bit more tedious. I'm just going to paint right over them because I can still see through the blue paint. And I'm just going to cover this entire background here. Now, as you're painting, if you realize that you have a little bit of a Crayola effect as you're painting, so when you paint, it makes it look like you're marking with a crayon, go ahead and pick up a little bit more paint off your palette, because you're just lacking the quantity of paint. And again, I'm able to see all the drawings from underneath, so I'm just painting right over those, and I'm not going to worry about it too much. And now that I'm done with that, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my black paint, just straight out of the tube black, and I'm going to start painting my mountain. And with these Liquitex basics, I found that some of the colors are a little bit transparent, so I'm going to go ahead and lay down a layer, and if you want it a darker or richer black like I did a couple layers of black after I laid down the first one. So I laid down the first one, let it dry a little bit, and then added the second layer, and I got the nice deep black that I was looking for. Again, if you would like to pause at any moment during this video, feel free. Alright, so now the next thing that I'm going to do now that I'm done with my black, I am going to go ahead and start on my swirl. Now I'm going to pick up some of my blue, some of my white, and mix that up until I get a nice light blue color. It's better to have too much paint rather than having too little. So I'm going to make a nice big batch. And I'm going to use my small round brush again, and I'm going to work that into my swirl that's right behind my pork. Now as I'm going, if I go over the edge of the actual line drawing that I have underneath, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to be able to refine that a little bit more as I am painting with my other colors. And just working around my porg. Like, I'm not trying to cover it up deliberately, but if it overlaps a little bit, it's not a big deal. But I'm still also being careful as I work around my character. So now I'm preparing my colors for my actual Starry Night scene. So I'm going to be doing a deeper orange, and that's going to be for my moon and the inside of my stars. I'm just going to go ahead and mix that color up ahead of time. And for that orange, I'm doing yellow and red and making a little bit more on the red side. Now, because of the type of paint that this is, I am going to be doing a couple different layers for this. And let me show you here. As I put down this orange, you see that you can still really see a lot of the blue underneath it, and it doesn't quite pop as much as I want it to. It kind of blends in. So to fix this, what we're going to do is you're going to get straight out of the tube white, and I am putting a new little dollop right over here because I used so much of it in my light blue. I want to have fresh white paint. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to work that white paint into my moon and my stars. And you'll notice that my moon is a little on the orange side because I did lay that orange down, but that's okay. Because the point is just to add a white layer underneath. And ideally you want to wait to put down your white paint until your background is completely dry, but if you don't want to wait around, you can always grab a blow dryer out of your bathroom and use it to dry the acrylic paint a little bit faster. My paint actually dried pretty quickly, so I was able to add this white layer without having to pull out my blow dryer, but there were a couple wet spots. Now I'm going to grab straight out of the tube yellow, and I'm going to pick that up, add a little bit of that orange that I mixed earlier, and I'm trying to make a very lightish orange color. I'm going to put a little bit more yellow. And the color that I'm mixing here is going to be going on my Porg's legs. So these are the legs and the feet color. And I kind of wanted this orangey yellow, almost duck foot kind of color. I'm going to go ahead and just add that in. And it's okay if you go outside of your lines a little bit, because we can always come back and fix that later. And you'll notice that I have kind of gone outside the line just a little bit on the top part of the leg, but I'll show you guys how to fix that later. And you'll notice that I'm kind of twisting my brush a little bit, and I'm just doing that because I have a little bit of too much paint in my brush. And so I'm just kind of laying my brush on the side and twisting it so that way I can push some of that paint out, so that way I'm not putting more paint down than I want to. Then I just grabbed some of that darker orange and kind of just painted it through just to give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more personality in the legs. And there are the legs, and you'll notice that that covered up that green pretty well. So now what I'm doing is my Porg's belly is going to be white, but instead of just leaving my canvas completely white and not even touching it, I'm adding paint, because there's a certain texture and gloss that paint leaves on the canvas that if I were to just leave the canvas white, you can tell that it's just canvas. So it doesn't actually look like white paint, it just looks like you missed a spot that you forgot to paint that portion of the canvas, because it just looks like a blank canvas. So I'm just painting the belly and a little bit of the face with my white paint. And now I'm going to pick up my yellow color here that I used for the feet, and I'm going to make the yellowish oranges, this yellow orange mask that the Porgs have. So I'm just going right along the edge of the eye here, and as I paint, I'm kind of bringing it down around the eye and up over the top of the eye. And as I'm going, I'm not really focused on making a perfectly straight line, because again, I want to give him a fuzzy effect, give him a fuzzy look. So it's almost like he has on a ninja mask, like he wants to be part of the Ninja Turtles. I'm going to go under the eye as well, but I'm not going to put it all the way across the bottom part of the nose. I'm going to bring it down a little bit in between the eyes, but I'm not going to connect it over the nose or over the mouth that I have. I'm just going to bring it down a little bit like this. So the nose and the mouth are still in the white realm. And then the orange mask kind of wraps around that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the Porg color. Now technically the Porgs are kind of this gray color, but I actually wanted to do a purple color just to give it a little bit more life, a little bit more flair. And if you wanted to, because this is your Porg, you can make the Porg any color that you want. You can do your favorite color, each of your siblings can do different colors. You can even do a rainbow Porg if you wanted to, but I just wanted to do a purple. So I'm grabbing my blue and my red, mixing it together, adding a little bit of white. And I'm going to get a couple different hues of blue. So I kind of have this super deep dark blue, and then I'm going to grab some white and add a little bit lighter purple to this mixture. So have this nice deep purple, and then grabbing a little bit of white, and then having a little bit of a lighter purple. And I'm just going to go ahead and lay down my purple, and as I'm doing it, I'm going to work around the white that I already have down. But it's okay if you overlap or make a mistake. We're going to go back and we're going to work it a little bit more. So I have a little bit of my lighter purple, and I'm going to make it a little bit lighter on top, and then as I move down the wing of my Porg, that's where it's going to get darker. So I have my light purple, just bringing it down, grabbing my medium purple, and working it up and down, and then I have my darker purple and I'm putting it all the way to the bottom and then working it kind of up and down, up and down. And I'm not worried about making the blend this perfectly smooth transition, just because I really want to give off the illusion that my Porg has feathers and is fluffy and adorable. So here I am, I'm grabbing that lighter purple again towards the top and just kind of dabbing it as I go to mix. And if you have kind of a hard line of color, you can just go ahead and kind of dab it with your paintbrush to soften it up and to blend it a little more. So I have my darker purple here and working it up into my medium purple, kind of dabbing as I go. And I don't want to forget the top of his head because that's a little gray poking out, but in this case it's purple. And I made sure to bring that purple right up along the edge of that orange that I laid down really close to the mouth and the nose. But don't worry, we're gonna come back to that in a second, and we're going to clean it up a little bit. A little bit of my darker color along the edge here. Just trying to give it some depth. And the reason we use all these different hues is just honestly to really make our character pop. And I'm just going to continue to kind of play around with it, dabbing as I go, picking up my light purple, my medium purple, and my super dark purple, and just adding it where I go. And don't worry about messing up, because we can always come back over it with white and fix it. Bring that purple down a little bit more. Just kind of dab it as I go. That purple actually looks really good. Now I'm going to let that sit and dry, because we're just like with our stars, we're going to be working with layers with our Porg. So I'm going to grab straight out of the tube yellow, and I'm going to go ahead and go over my little white stars that I have that I left alone for a little bit. And the reason I let it sit for a minute is because I wanted it to dry, so that way I could work in layers. So here I go with my straight out of the tube yellow. And I'm also going to make sure that I put in the yellow all around in my moon too. Now that my moon is all filled in with yellow, I'm going to rinse my brush a little bit. Grab some yellow, and I'm using a small round brush, but if you have a small flat brush, go ahead and use that, and just make little dash marks around all your circles that you made. And if you don't have a flat brush, you can always get your round brush wet and then pinch it with the paper towel, and it'll flatten out that edge, so that way you can go through and do these little dashes around your circles. And this is where we kind of get into that Van Gogh technique. So just dash, dash, dash all around. Now that I've gotten enough like dashy yellows, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab a couple different colors. I'm gonna grab my light blue that I used for my swirl, and I'm gonna do the same thing, just go around and dash, dash, dash. And you really don't have to worry about adding too many or too much, because honestly, with this kind of technique, the more you have, the better. And I'm putting little dashes around my swirl too. I'm not just stopping at my circles. So with the light blue, I just kind of added some more swirls, added more dashes around my swirl. So I'm gonna go through and just dash, dash, dash with my light blue. I'd say that actually looks pretty good. So now I'm grabbing some straight out of the tube white. You can't see it on camera, but I do have, I got a new pile of fresh out of the tube white just for this. So I'm doing the same thing that I did before, just dashing all around, dash, dash, dash. And I say that's looking pretty good. So now that I have my my stars done, I'm gonna go ahead and pick up straight out of the tube blue, and I'm going to dash inside my swirl and just follow the form of the swirl. So I'm just gonna go with that line. So as I put my dashes, it's gonna follow along perfectly with the swirl. Now I'm grabbing some white and I'm dashing through with the white. Once you feel like you have enough white and it's looking satisfactory, go ahead and grab straight out of the tube yellow and do the same thing, just dash all the way through. This really makes it pop. I really like the way this looks. Okay, now that we're done with that, I'm going to show you guys a couple ways that you can tackle the eyes of your pork. So you can take a Sharpie and just work around the highlights that you have drawn in, and you can color that with a Sharpie. Just color all the way through. Or you can also pick up a paintbrush and paint it in black. And then I'm going to go ahead and just Sharpie over to really get my mouth so it pops, so that way I can plan from there. And then you can grab some black paint and you can paint over the Sharpie and get any little nooks and crannies that you might have missed. Grabbing some white paint and accentuating those highlights in his eye. And now that I'm done with my eyes, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my paintbrush and black paint and just re-outline my pork. Now, if you are not very confident with outlining with paint, you can just let your pork dry and then go back over it with Sharpie, but you want to make sure that your pork is dry, because if you use a Sharpie on wet paint, you're going to get wet paint all in the Sharpie, and then it's definitely not going to work. And then your marker is definitely not going to want to work anymore. I just went ahead and used my paintbrush instead of a Sharpie. And I'm making sure that I have the line for the wings so you can tell where it begins and then where it stops. And you might have to go over it a couple times, and that's okay. And now that I'm done with my outlining of my pork, I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to go ahead and do the inside of my stars and also paint in my moon. And I'm using that orange color that I mixed when I was getting ready for the pork's legs. And just like with everything else in this painting, this has to be done in a couple layers. If you don't want to do it in a couple layers, that's fine. I just like it because it makes my color so much more, it makes it less transparent. So now that I've let my pork dry a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and add the jowl shape to my pork. So I'm going to pick up some straight out of the tube white. I'm just going to kind of dab around the mouth. I'm making sure not to cover it up or get any paint on it. And I'm reworking that form. So I'm just painting over, and you'll see that you can see through the white paint to the, to that purple that kind of got in the way there, and that is perfectly fine. I just took my time and did my white in layers. And now with my white paint and my round brush, I'm just going to rework the edge of that purple there, just so that way I can get the really nice, feathery, fluffy effect. And I'm going back, now that my white has a little bit of time to dry, I'm going to go back over and do another layer. There we go. See, and that's just one layer. I can go back and I can keep doing this over and over again, and until you can't see anything underneath it anymore. But I'm really working on that round shape that comes around the mouth, because if you look at a picture of a pork, it almost looks like they have these really super flat faces and almost like they have jowls, like a dog or something, like a pug. So I'm just making sure that that white is very round around the mouth, so that way it gives off that feel. And last but not least, I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of my smaller brushes and pick up some white and kind of go through and refine the highlights that I have. So I have these highlights in the eyes, and then I have the round highlights here. And that's the only place that I haven't actually put paint down. So I'm gonna put some white paint down so that way the canvas is still painted, even though it's the color white. And now I'm just taking some white and I'm following along the edges of my Porg. And this just really helps my painting to pop off the background just that much more. It really is helping my Porg pop off the canvas just that much more by adding these little white lines around it, almost like little highlights on the feathers. And I'm just kind of going right around the edges, you know, other side of the face, on top and beside the wing. And then I'm going to go ahead and add highlights to the leg and webbed feet as well. And because I've given my Porg a little bit more time to dry, I'm just going to add another layer of white to really make sure that that purple that overlapped on the face more than I wanted to really hides. And I'm just dabbing right along the edge of that purple to really give it a nice fuzzy kind of texture. So even though he's all feathery, has a nice little fuzziness about him. And there is my Porg. And I think he turned out really, really cute. So if you guys like this video, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more fun videos just like this one, head on over to our Paint It Kids YouTube channel and check out all the other videos that we have. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.